It's October, the month of ghosts, goblins, and things that go bump in the night. So let us enjoy 3 stories written by Edgar Allen Poe, the author of morbid stories himself. Never bet the devil your head. Through this latter most ungentlemanly practice, the ruin which I had predicted to Toby Dammit overtook him at last. The fashion had grown with his growth and strengthened with his strength, so that when he came to be a man, he could scarcely utter a sentence without interlacing it with a preposition to gamble. Not that he actually laid wagers, no. I will do my friend the justice to say that he would as soon have laid eggs. With him, the thing was a mere formula, nothing more. His expressions on this had no meaning attached to them whatever. They were simple, if not altogether innocent expletives, imaginative phrases to round off a sentence. When he said, "I'll bet you do so-and-so," nobody ever thought of taking him up. But still, I could not help thinking it my duty to put him down. The habit was an immoral one, and so I told him. It was a rude one. This I begged him to believe. It was discouraged by society. Here I said nothing but the truth. It was forbidden by act of Congress. Here I had not the slightest intention of telling a lie. I scolded, but to no purpose. I demonstrated, in vain. I entreated. He smiled. I implored. He laughed. I preached. He sneered. I threatened. He swore. I kicked him. He called for the police. I pulled his nose. He blew it and offered to bet the devil his head that I would not venture to try that experiment again. Poverty was another problem Dammit's mother had given her son. He was poor, and this was the reason that his expletive expressions about betting seldom changed. I cannot say that I ever heard him use a figure of speech as, "I bet you $1." It was usually, "I'll bet you what you please," or "I'll bet you what you dare," or "I'll bet you a trifle," or else, more significantly still, "I'll bet the devil my head." This last phrase seemed to please him best, perhaps because it involved the least risk, for Dammit had become excessively stingy. Had anyone taken him up, his head was small, and thus his loss would have been small too. But these are my own thoughts, and I am not sure that I am right in giving them to him. In any event, the phrase in question grew daily in favor, notwithstanding the gross impropriety of a man betting his brains like banknotes. But this was a point which my friend's ignorance would not allow him to comprehend. In the end, he abandoned all other forms of wager and stuck to "I'll bet the devil my head" with a pertinacity and exclusiveness of devotion that displeased and surprised me. I am always annoyed by circumstances for which I cannot account. Mysteries force a man to think, and so injure his health. The truth is, there was something in the air with which Mr. Dammit was wont to give utterances to this offensive expression. Something in his manner of enunciation, which at first interested and afterwards made me very uneasy. I began not to like it at all. Mr. Dammit's soul was in a perilous state. I resolved to bring all my persuasiveness to save it. Once more I took to remonstrance. Again I collected myself for a final attempt at a reasoned argument. When I had made an end of my lecture, Mr. Dammit indulged himself in some very equivocal behavior. For some moments he remained silent, merely looking at me inquisitively in the face. But presently he threw his head to one side and largely elevated his eyebrows. Then he spread out the palms of his hands and shrugged up his shoulders. He then winked his right eye, and, applying his thumb to his nose, made an indescribable movement with the rest of his fingers. Finally, he consented to reply. I can call to mind only the heads of his discourse. He would be obliged to me if I would hold my tongue. He wished none of my advice. He despised all my insinuations. He was old enough to take care of himself. Did I think him a baby, damn it? Did I mean to say anything against his character? Did I intend to insult him? Was I a fool? Was my maternal parent aware, in a word, of my absence from the domiciliary residence? He would put this latter question to me as a man of veracity, and he would bind himself to abide by my reply. Once more he would demand to know if my mother knew I was out. In my confusion, he said it betrayed me, and he would be willing to bet the devil his head that she did not. Mr. Dammit did not pause for my rejoinder. Turning upon his heel, he left. It was well for him that he did so. My feelings had been wounded. Even my anger had been aroused. For once, I would have taken him up upon his insulting wager. I would have won for the arch-enemy Mr. Dammit's little head. For the fact is, my mamma was very well aware of my merely temporary absence from home. It was in this pursuance of my duty that I had been insulted, and I bore the insult like a man. It now seemed to me, however, that I had done all that I could for this miserable individual, and I resolved to trouble him no longer with my counsel, but to leave him to himself. But I could not bring myself to give up his company altogether. I even went so far as to humor some of his less reprehensible tendencies, and there were times when I found myself lauding his wicked jokes with tears in my eyes. One fine day, having strolled out together, our route led us in the direction of a river. There was a bridge, and we decided to cross it. It was roofed to protect from the weather, having only a few windows, and was uncomfortably dark. As we entered the passage, the contrast between the external glare and the interior gloom struck heavily upon my spirits. Not so upon Dammit, who offered to bet the devil his head that I was hipped. He seemed to be in an unusually good mood. He was excessively lively, so much so that I became rather suspicious. It is not impossible that he was infected with the transcendentals. I am not well enough versed, however, in the diagnosis of this disease to speak with decision upon the point, and unhappily there were none of my friends of the dial present. I suggest the idea nevertheless, because of a certain species of austere Merry Andrewism which seemed to beset my poor friend and caused him to make quite a fool of himself. Nothing would serve him but wriggling and skipping about under and over everything that came in his way, now shouting out and then lisping out all manner of little and big words, yet keeping the gravest face in all the world the whole time. I really could not make up my mind whether to kick or to pity him. At length, having passed almost across the bridge, we approached the end of the footway when our progress was impeded by a turnstile of some height. Through this I made my way quietly, pushing it around as usual. But this would not serve Mr. Dammit. He insisted upon leaping the stile and said that he could cut a pigeon wing over it in the air. Now this, conscientiously speaking, I did not think he could do. The best pigeon winger over all kinds of styles was my friend Mr. Carlyle, and as I knew he could not do it, I would not believe that it could be done by Toby Dammit. I therefore told him in so many words that he was a braggart and could not do what he said. For this I had reason to be sorry afterward, for he straightway offered to bet the devil his head he could. I was about to reply when I heard, close at my elbow, a slight cough, which sounded very much like ahem. I started and looked surprised round me. My glance fell into the framework of the bridge and upon the figure of a little lame old gentleman of venerable aspect. Nothing could be more reverend than his whole appearance, for he had on a full suit of black. His shirt was perfectly clean, and the collar turned very neatly down over a white cravat, while his hair was parted in the front. His hands were clasped pensively together over his stomach, and his two eyes were carefully rolled into the top of his head. Upon observing him more closely, I perceived that he wore a black silk apron over his small clothes, and I thought it very odd. But before I had time to make any remark, he interrupted me with a second ahem. To this, I was not immediately prepared to reply. I have known a quarterly review nonplussed by the word fudge, but I am not ashamed to say that I turned to Mr. Dammit for assistance. "Dammit," said I, "what are you about? Don't you hear? The gentleman says ahem." I looked sternly at my friend while I addressed him, for, to say the truth, I felt particularly puzzled, and when a man is puzzled, he must knit his brow and look savage. or else he is pretty sure to look like a fool. Damn it, observed I, although this sounded very much like an oath, than which nothing was further from my thoughts. Damn it, I suggested. The gentleman says, ahem. I do not attempt to defend my remark on this score. I did not think it profound myself, but I have noticed that the effect of our speeches is not always proportionate to their importance in our own eyes. And if I had shot Mr. D through and through with a bomb, or knocked him in the head with a book, he would hardly have been more discomfited than when I addressed him with those simple words, Damn it, what are you about? Don't you hear? The gentleman says, ahem. You don't say, he gasped at length, after turning more colors than a pirate ship runs up one after the other when chased by a man of war. Are you quite sure he said that? Well, at all events, I am in for it now, and I may as well put on a bold face upon the matter. Here goes. Ahem. At this, the little old gentleman seemed pleased, God only knows why. He left his station at the nook of the bridge, limped forward with a gracious air, took Dammit by the hand, and shook it cordially, looking straight up into his face with an air of gentleness which is impossible for a man to imagine. I am quite sure you will win, Dammit, said he with the frankness of all smiles. But we are obliged to have a trial, you know, for the sake of form. Ahem, replied my friend, taking off his coat with a deep sigh, tying a pocket handkerchief around his waist, and producing an unaccountable alteration in his countenance by twisting up his eyes and bringing down the corners of his mouth. Ahem, and ahem, said he again after a pause, and not another word more than ahem did I know him to say after that. Aha, thought I, without expressing myself aloud. This is quite a remarkable silence on the part of Toby Dammit, and is no doubt a consequence of his loud rambling upon the previous occasion. One extreme induces another. I wonder if he has forgotten the many unanswerable questions which he propounded to me so fluently on the day when I gave him my last lecture. At all events, he is cured of his transcendentals. Ahem, replied Toby, as if he had been reading my thoughts, and looking very sheepishly. The old gentleman now took him by the arm, and led him more into the shade of the bridge, a few paces back from the turnstile. Now, my good fellow, said he, I make it a point of conscience to allow you this much run. Wait here. I will take my place by the stile so that I may see whether you go over it handsomely and transcendentally, and don't omit any flourishes of the pigeon wing, a mere form, you know. I will say 1, 2, 3, and away. Mind you, start at the word away. Here he took his position by the stile, paused a moment as if in profound reflection, then looked up, and I thought smiled very slightly, then tightened the strings of his apron, took a long look at Dammit, and finally gave the word as agreed upon. 1, 2, 3, and away. Punctually at the word away, my poor friend set off in a strong gallop. The stile was not very high, but upon the whole I made sure that he would clear it. And then what if he did not? Ah, that was the question. What if he did not? What right, said I, had the old gentleman to make any other gentleman jump? Who is he? If he asks me to jump, I won't do it. And I don't care who the devil he is. The bridge, as I say, was covered and arched in a very ridiculous manner, and there was an almost uncomfortable echo about it at all times, an echo which I never observed as much as when I uttered the last 4 words of my remark. But what I said, or what I thought, or what I heard, occupied only an instant. In less than 5 seconds from his starting, poor Toby had taken the leap. I saw him run nimbly and spring grandly from the floor of the bridge, cutting the most awful flourish with his legs as he went up. I saw him high in the air, pigeon-winging it to admiration just over the top of the stile, and of course I thought it an unusually singular thing that he did not continue to go over. But the whole leap was the affair of a moment, and before I had a chance to make any profound reflections, down came Mr. Dammit on the flat of his back on the same side of the stile from which he had started. At the same instant, I saw the old gentleman limping off at the top of his speed, having caught and wrapped up in his apron something that fell heavily into it from the darkness of the arch just over the turnstile. At all this I was much astonished, but I had no leisure to think, for Dammit lay particularly still, and I concluded that his feelings had been hurt and that he stood in need of my assistance. I hurried up to him and found that he had received what might be termed a serious injury. The truth is, he had been deprived of his head, which after a close search I could not find anywhere. So I determined to take him home and send for the doctor. In the meantime, a thought struck me, and I threw open an adjacent window of the bridge, when the sad truth flashed upon me at once. About 5 feet just above the top of the turnstile, and crossing the arch of the footpath to constitute a brace, there extended a flat iron bar, lying horizontally and forming one of a series that served to strengthen the structure throughout its extent. With the edge of this brace, it appeared evident that the neck of my unfortunate friend had come precisely in contact. He did not long survive his terrible loss. The doctor did not give him enough physic, and what little they did give him he hesitated to take. So, in the end, he grew worse, and at length died. Lenore, by Edgar Allan Poe. Ah, broken is the golden bowl, the spirit flown forever. Let the bell toll, a saintly soul floats on the Stygian river. And Guy de Vere, hast thou no tear? Weep now or nevermore. See, on yon drear and rigid bier, lowly lies thy love, Lenore. Come, let the burial rite be read, the funeral song be sung, an anthem for the queenliest dead that ever died so young. A dirge for her the doubly dead, in that she died so young. Wretches, ye loved her for her health, and hated her for her pride, and when she fell in feeble health, ye blessed her that she died. How shall the ritual then be read, the requiem how be sung? By you, by yours, the evil eye, by yours, the slanderous tongue, that did to death the innocent that died, and died so young. Economus, but rave not thus, and let a Sabbath song go up to God so solemnly the dead may feel no wrong. The sweet Lenore hath gone before, with hope that flew beside, leaving thee wild for the dear child that should have been thy bride. For her, the fair and debonair, that now so lowly lies, the life upon her yellow hair, but not within her eyes. The life still there upon her hair, the death upon her eyes. Avaunt, avaunt, from friends below, the indignant ghost is riven from hell unto a high estate, far up within the heaven. From groan and grief to a golden throne beside the King of Heaven. Let no bell toll then, lest her soul, amid its hallowed mirth, should catch the note as it doth float up from the damned earth. And I, tonight my heart is light, no dirge will I upraise, but wave the angel on her flight with a paean of old days. The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisant made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. When this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore? Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, "Doubtless," said I, "what it utters is only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast, and followed faster, till his song one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of nevermore." But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy into fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, "Nevermore." This I sat engaged in guessing, no syllables expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then, methought, air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels named Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie that thou hast spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore.